beautiful people. I'm Dr. Tassel Faith, and today we have an exciting topic: men, my beautiful brothers. The truth is, the absolute greatest turn on for women is your vulnerability. It's not how much money you make. It's not your status. It's not your sports car. It's not the size of your private parts. The number one turn on is your vulnerability. So I'm Dr. Tassel Faith. I'm a licensed doctor of psychotherapy. And I am drawing my conclusions that I'm going to share today from over a decade of working with women and men, from my own personal experiences and talking to my girlfriends. So this is lots of evidence compiled over, well, really a lifetime. So let's just start with, what do women seem to really treasure in their relationships with men? And what I have found is what they treasure is connection. They treasure connection. We as women treasure connection. And vulnerability on both sides of the, well, okay, so right now, I don't mean to just be talking about heterosexual relationships, but if we are partnered with someone, whether we're a man, woman, two men, two women, a man and a woman, connection comes through vulnerability, right? It's the pathway to connect when each person is able to share, right? What is connecting? Connecting basically is just sharing. That's all it really is. It's nothing too complicated or too fancy, but sometimes it can be challenging to share if we have some perhaps anxieties, some doubt, some fear about what we are sharing. And this is really a huge portal that we are moving through in our society as we move to a more, I would say, a more conscious society, a more conscious planet. We are learning and we are being invited to be our authentic selves and to share from our authentic self and to let go of the masks, the personalities we have taken on, trying to fit in, trying to be loved, to let go of all of it and just to come back to our authentic selves and to share from this place of authenticity. And in the women that I work with, in the women that I know, in what they are looking for is connection. They are looking for authentic connection. So we're going to talk about three main points here around this topic. And I just sort of have to giggle because the title of this video, the biggest turn on is your vulnerability. And it really is the truth. It is, I've seen some memes, say on Facebook, that show a picture of a man doing housework, maybe even, dressed in a certain outfit, but sweeping the floor, vacuuming, doing the dishes. And, the title of the meme is the new sexy or something like that. And yeah, that's awesome. It is awesome for the man in your life to pitch in and share the household duties. That is a huge turn on for sure. But I would say an even bigger turn on is just tell me what's going on with you. Just open up that throat chakra, open up your heart. Let me know who you are. Let me know what you're moving through. Let me know your feelings. I just want to know you. I just want to connect with you. I just want to know your truth, my dear brother. Okay, so we're going to talk about 3 steps here in being able to be more vulnerable for the male collective. And one of these is the first step, and we're going to talk about each of these more in depth, is releasing the societal programming. The second step is talking about how vulnerability is really the most courageous practice that we can have as humans. And number 3, we're going to talk about the integration of the inner masculine and the inner feminine that both genders are being invited to engage in. So I was born in the 1960s, and definitely in my generation, there was just incredible pressure for men, for the brothers that I grew up with in school and in my community, to not be emotional, right? We all know this phrase, boys don't cry. We all know this programming. This is extremely severe, dense programming in our culture, that somehow it is a sign of weakness. Somehow it is a sign of weakness to cry, or to feel the full range of our emotions, or to express, for men to express their emotions if they're sad, for instance. So we're all extremely familiar, intimate with this very, very, very dense programming for our brothers. And I just feel like pausing here and saying, brothers, I honor what you have borne in this society. I deeply, deeply honor your path in this society, where you have really not been allowed to feel your feelings, to be vulnerable, to cry. I deeply honor the path you have been on, and I wholeheartedly support you being able to be vulnerable and be yourself and feel all of your feelings. So deeply, deeply, deeply honor the path that you have been on, dear brother. Deeply honor. My sister here is on the chat, and she is saying, how can we model for our teen sons that crying is okay when their fathers do not cry or express emotions? This would be transformative for our sons. I am grateful, Deborah, for this question, and it is one of the main reasons that I felt guided to do this video, because I too have a teenage son, and his dad, who is my ex-husband, is an absolutely wonderful man, and I think the world of him, and he too received such dense programming about not showing his emotions. So it's something that is very, very near and dear to my heart. And stay tuned over this 30 minutes or so, because we're gonna talk about all of this, and just thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, it's a great point. Okay, so we know what we're up against. We know what we're up against. We are up against this extremely dense, severe programming in our society that somehow it's not masculine to be vulnerable, to show our emotions, to cry, etc. Okay, so first step for all of us as sisters on this planet and as brothers We want to release that programming. We want to realize that, like, truly most of the programming we received in our society, it's misguided. It is not the healthy way. It is not the enlightened way. It is not the conscious way to move through life. So, as women and as men, we can stand firm in saying no to this programming, in just saying no. So, for instance, the question that was raised, myself as a mother of a son, I am talking to him about this programming. And can I tell you, it's really challenging because he doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want to hear what I have to say about releasing this programming because he wants to be a man. And he is being so indoctrinated by his peers, by the men in his family, by teachers at his school. And they're not trying to do anything wrong, right? They've just been indoctrinated themselves. So no blame here. But I'll just share that it has been very challenging for me to talk to my son about feeling his feelings and crying and being vulnerable, because he has received the message that it is not masculine to do these things. And he wants to be a man. My son is 15 and he wants to fit in and he wants to be accepted by his peer group and by the girls in his peer group as well. So we're up against some strong challenges here. But how do we meet these challenges? We meet it with the truth. We meet it with the truth. We meet it with the truth. So when we tune in to our own guidance and our own heart about being our authentic selves and feeling our feelings and being able to cry, we can feel the truth. We can feel the truth of all humans being able to be their full selves, which includes how they feel. Sorry, there's a lot of sunlight coming in here. So we have to stand tall, and we have to be willing for things to be a bit awkward. And as mothers, I think we have to be willing for things to be a bit awkward and a little uncomfortable with our sons, and to check in, how do our sons feel about this? Check in when they really go into their heart. How do they feel about it? It's not easy. It's not an easy task that I think I have to move around a little bit. That we're headed to here. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. Yes, so not an easy task to come up against this very, very strong societal programming. But like all the other societal programming, if we don't speak the truth and we don't start talking about it, starting with our sons, it's not going to change. So number one, let's be in the truth. Let's speak about these things. I love the phrase, speak the unspoken. So yeah, it might be uncomfortable. Yes, our sons, at least at first, may not even want to talk about it. But okay, let's move forward anyway. So let's speak the unspoken. Let's talk about the white elephant in the room. Let's be in our truth. So number one, as women in our society, that is what we can do. And we can greatly support our brothers, our sons, our fathers who are so indoctrinated into this programming. Again, just by talking about it. So if you are in a partnership with a man, you can tell your man, wow, you know what really turns me on is when you're vulnerable, is when you tell me how you feel. When I see you cry, that's amazing. So we can talk about it. We can bring it to the light. We can support our precious brothers, our sons, our partners in dismantling this very injurious programming. And if you are a man listening right now, again, you can be a leader in this movement. You can be a leader. You can release these societal expectations, and you can come back to your heart, to your feelings, to your vulnerability. And this is just a great exercise in general, because in general, we want to let go of requiring external validation. So no matter what type of societal programming we are releasing, we may, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I thought I had put this on mute. We may come up against criticism when we are forerunners in releasing any type of societal construct. So as a precious man in this society, if you are a leader in feeling your feelings, in crying, in expressing yourself, you may come up against criticism. This may be triggering to men, it may be triggering to women. But what else can we do but lead the way and just release the programming and release the need to be externally validated by anyone else in our society? So it's not an easy task. It is not an easy task, but this is what a leader does. A leader takes the lead. A leader goes against the grain. A leader stands up for what is right and what is highest and best, even when it is difficult, even when there might be criticism. So that is how we roll. And I often say this, our only really important relationship is with our own alignment and our own relationship with our higher source, our higher consciousness. And if you are able to be your authentic self and feel your feelings and express yourself and cry, very likely you are in your alignment. So, and everything will flow beautifully in your life, regardless of if there might be a little bit of pushback from those around you. So we're always on our highest and best path when we are in alignment, when we are in our truth. And our truth absolutely does start with our vulnerability. Vulnerability is just truth. That's all it is. It's like a fancy word, but vulnerability just means you're being truthful and you're sharing your truth. It's so simple. Children have this down pat, right? We all come into the world absolutely naturally truthful and vulnerable. And then somewhere along the line, we are taught that what we're expressing isn't right, that there's something shameful about what we're expressing or who we are. And then we close down and we stop being vulnerable and we stop being truthful. So we're being invited right now to just let go of all of that programming that has not helped us at all. Okay, so number one, we're going to release this dense societal programming that is not serving any of us. Can I get a hell yes? Oh my gosh, hell yes, hell yes. I just feel so passionate about this topic, and I'll explain why a little bit later on. Okay, the second point here is that vulnerability, truthfulness, is actually the most courageous way to be. So if we're going to buy into this whole archetype that men, quote unquote, need to be courageous in order to be masculine, which I don't even buy into that. And anyway, I think men just need to be themselves. But if we want to buy into that at all, being vulnerable and truthful and sharing your authentic self, to me, is extremely courageous. It's if we're not sharing, if we are living in fear of I can't share, I can't cry, I don't want these other people to see the true me, that's acting from fear, right? That is complete fear-based practices. And that's the opposite of being courageous and living in courage. So truly, it's backwards. If we're buying into this whole idea that part of being masculine is being courageous, which again is quite debatable. I think being masculine is just being yourself. Being feminine is just being yourself, actually. But speaking the truth and being vulnerable and sharing, to me, is the most courageous practice. So if you are sharing, if you are being authentic, if you are saying things that you might have a twinge of, oh, it's a little uncomfortable to share, you're killing it. You are killing it. You are living in courage. And I honor you deeply. I honor you no matter what, but I really deeply respect and honor the practice of courage in all aspects of life. And being truthful, being authentic, being vulnerable, it can be a very courageous practice in our society. So being vulnerable and truthful and sharing, to me, is extremely courageous. Okay, and then the third point here is all of us, men and women, we are all being invited to nurture and integrate our inner masculine and our inner feminine. So as human spirit beings in these bodies on the planet, we all have an inner masculine and an inner feminine. Both genders. Both genders, we have both. So on the man side, where generally they have been taught just to nurture and develop and portray their inner masculine, men are really being invited to get in touch with their inner feminine aspects, part of which are this vulnerability, emotional expression, feeling all of your feelings, as well as other characteristics. For instance, we might think of like our artisticness or creativity as more typically female aspects, and men are just being invited to embrace their whole authentic selves, right? The masculine, what we think of as masculine aspects, and what we think of as feminine aspects. And really, when we break it down, we're just talking about human aspects, right? And that we want to be free to embody all aspects of being a human, not just these gender-specific aspects according to our actual gender. And then for women, same thing. We are being invited to not only embody our inner feminine, but our inner masculine as well. And just an example of this that I'll share is, for me, I have been divorced now, well, living separately from my ex-husband for about 6 years. And over these 6 years, I feel that I have been able to see and more comprehensively develop my inner masculine. Partly because I own my own home, I have my own business as an entrepreneur, and I've had to level up. I've had to man up, basically, because there isn't a man in my house besides my teenage son, who's awesome. So I've had to man up internally. I've had to take on what might have been seen as more masculine aspects. Uh, you know, just like fixing things around the house or figuring out technical aspects of my business or being more in my rational mind, for instance, being more of a protector to myself. These might be considered typically more masculine aspects. But again, the point here is that all of us, men and women, are being invited to become whole, to integrate into our one being, our inner feminine and our inner masculine. We don't have to live as these divided selves of, oh, I'm only in my inner feminine as a woman, I'm only in my inner masculine as a man. No, this is a time for wholeness. This is a time for integration. And just along these lines, I grew up, I would say, in Cinderella world. This idea that I needed a man for certain things. I needed a man to whisk me away into his castle and take care of me financially and tell me that he loves me and that I look pretty. Right? That was the messaging from Cinderella land. Yeah, we don't need that. That's codependence, right? And that is very disempowering. So, as a woman, we can be our full authentic self, embracing our quote unquote inner masculine aspects as well as our inner feminine aspects. And beautiful brothers, you can do the same. You are being invited to embrace your inner masculine aspects as well as your inner feminine aspects. Isn't this amazing? We, both genders, can just be whole beings. Wow! Amazing, right? It's amazing. We can let go of codependence. We can let go of repressing ourselves. We can all feel completely empowered as the completely powerful beings that we are and that we came here to be. We are system interrupters. We are saying no to the current collective programming of men can't cry and women need men financially. Those are just two little examples of this. Just looking at the chat. Hi, Debbie. So glad you're here. And hi, Mud Chat. Yay! We've got some powerful sisters in the house. And so glad you're here. Okay, so just a few more points here. So we've talked about let's release the societal programming. Let's speak the truth that we are all here to be full beings, including the our full emotional expression. Vulnerability, to me, is one of the most courageous ways of being possible. And we are also being called to just integrate our inner masculine and our inner feminine for both genders. And a few more points here. I want to just share why, in particular, this topic I'm so passionate about. So in the beginning, I talked that I have a teenage son, and like any mom, you know, he's so dear to me. I want the very best for him. I don't want him to suffer. I want him to be able to have wonderful relationships with his friends, with an intimate partner, if that's what he chooses. And from my own experience with men across my life, starting with my dad, oh my goodness, I would say my biggest challenge in relationships with men has literally been often this lack of vulnerability, this lack of expression, and sort of dealing with men who are not feeling their feelings. So, you know, my dad, an amazing man, I love him very, very much. He grew up, He was born in 1938, so he grew up so much in the culture of a man can't cry, a man can't feel his feelings, and my dad, like many other men of that generation, he went through quite a bit of trauma, which further exacerbated his ability to connect with his emotional self. And emotionally, my dad just was really not able to be in connection with his feelings. And so he felt very, very distant. And I would say later on in life, he, maybe because when you get older, you are able to somewhat bow out of some of these societal expectations, which is great. And I do think as my dad got older and he became a grandfather, he did seem to be a bit more in touch with his feelings, which was really a blessing. But I would just say for me, my first experience with a man was definitely a man who was really not in connection with his emotional side. And I think this was very difficult on the marriage with my mother, and they did end up getting a divorce. And not to say that it was my dad's fault. I think my mother had her own things that she brought to the marriage as well, and not to criticize either one of them, but I don't think they were able to emotionally connect. And I think this caused a lot of suffering, and they did end up getting divorced. And then for me, moving on from there with intimate partners that I have had, including in my marriage and then after my marriage, this has been my greatest challenge with the men that I have been in intimate partnership with is literally this, is just, I don't know what is going on with them. I want to know. At times they can seem very distant. At times it can seem like there's a lot of anger, and I don't really know why. And I think what's interesting is that anger is societally accepted. I wouldn't say it's condoned or encouraged necessarily, but of all the more uncomfortable, lower vibrational energies, anger for a man seems to be okay. Right? We seem to be more comfortable seeing a man be angry than a man crying. It's more societally acceptable for a man to be angry than to be sad. And so I think that's why we see this in the men that we love. We might see more anger than sadness because they have been taught that sadness, crying is not acceptable. You're not a man. So, and then as women, we are dealing with a lot of anger sometimes in our relationships with men, and that's challenging for us. So the reason I'm so passionate about this is because, like many of us, I've just lived it. I've had very difficult relationships with men, in part because of this collective programming that men are not allowed to be sad, to be vulnerable, to feel their feelings, to express themselves. And on my side, there's plenty of things that I have brought to these relationships. I'm not at all saying it was just a one-sided problem at all. There are things from my programming and my trauma and my experiences that I bring in that make things difficult. But just because we're talking about this topic about men being able to be vulnerable, that I have really seen that in my life. And in many of the men I've dated, I mean, this has just been very comprehensive in my experience with men, that this is just so dense that very few men have been left untouched by this. And then another point here I'd like to bring up is for both men and women, we basically have been taught not to trust ourselves. So men have been taught to suppress, to not go there. It's not considered masculine. And an underlying aspect of all of this is somehow when you have feelings arise in you, you can't trust them. And women, we are often taught this too, to not trust ourselves, to not trust what is arising, to abandon ourselves, to turn away from ourselves. So a larger aspect here in general is come back to trusting yourself. Come back to honoring that whatever is coming up in me has a purpose. I can trust and honor myself, whether I'm a man or a woman, that I don't have to suppress it. I don't have to label it. I don't have to judge it. I don't have to turn away from it. I can be with myself, whether I'm a man or a woman. Oh, here comes sadness. Sadness is arising in me. Okay, I'm going to honor my sadness. I'm not saying we have to dwell in it. I'm not saying we have to look for it. But if authentically you feel sadness, please, brother and sister, feel your sadness. And I don't mean just talk about it. I don't mean call a friend. I don't mean go to a therapist. I mean feel it. Because that's a whole nother thing that we aren't even taught how to feel our feelings. And we often just end up talking about our feelings but not feeling them. So that's a whole nother aspect I'm not going to get too deeply into in this video. But if we can just actually feel the feelings can move through us in about 60 to 90 seconds. It's quick. Yes. MedChat says, feel it to heal it. Faux sure. And my dear sister Debbie says, your willingness to share your own story and vulnerability makes you even more amazing, Dr. Tassel. Oh, thank you so much, my dear sisters and friends. I'm so appreciative. So, yeah, so underlying a lot of this is let's just trust ourselves, men and women. Let's trust ourselves. Let's realize that whatever is happening within us, we can honor it. And it's happening for a reason. There is some highest and best aspect to feeling this feeling. And my experience has been personally and with all the beautiful people I work with, especially when we are able to feel the most uncomfortable feelings, there is an amazing gift on the other side of that. Our feelings are always portals. They're always guiding us somewhere. Honestly, if you do nothing else for your consciousness, if you just feel your feelings, you will hit it out of the ballpark. We don't have to do anything fancy. We don't have to read books. We don't have to go to workshops. We don't have to listen to other people. All of those things can be helpful. But the greatest path, the quickest path towards your own evolution of your consciousness and the transformation of your life, feel your feelings. Feel your feelings. Amazing, amazing transformative practice. Okay, let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to cover here. I want to also just talk a little bit about the ways that we numb out rather than feel our feelings. So many men in my life have turned to alcohol or other types of drugs when the feelings are so uncomfortable. Maybe they don't know how to feel them. Maybe they don't feel free to feel them. So instead, they will try to numb themselves out. I have experienced this in a lot of relationships. Alcohol is readily available in our society. And I'm not saying that alcohol is inherently bad or good, but just when we use alcohol or other drugs or any other type of activity, it can be anything. Exercise can be used to numb ourselves out. And I do think exercise inherently is healthy, but if we are turning to exercise or turning to anything rather than feeling our feelings, then it becomes a bypass. So we just want to be aware of all of the distractory activities that we do in order to avoid our feelings. Oh my gosh, I do this all the time. I tend to overeat and like over clean and over organize and overwork rather than feeling my feelings. So I do it, and I try to be aware of it, and I try to stop. And if I have a really uncomfortable feeling come up, I will try to deal with it right there and then if I have the time space, or I'll sort of bookmark it and deal with it later. But I call this basically emotional hygiene, just being on top of my emotional energy and feeling it. And this really is the greatest practice to inner peace, which arguably is perhaps what we all might be looking for, arguably. We do all these different things in our life to try to be happy, but truly it's arguable that inner peace is the holy grail, is the gold standard of actual contentment. Okay. And then just one more point I want to make here. With our conscious sisters, my beautiful men, my brothers, what our conscious sisters generally, in my experience, are really looking for, they want to connect with you, and they just want you to be you. There's a lot of programming that women want men, let's say, to have money or status or a certain car or even to look a certain way. And my experience with our conscious sisters is that, I mean, not to say those things can't be fun. Yeah, those things can be sort of, fun. But what do we really want? We want connection. And we want you just to be yourself. That's it. And we want to be in it with you. We want to walk this ascension path, this consciousness path together. You don't have to be anything. And we feel the same way. We don't want that pressure to have to be a certain way that the female has been programmed to be in our society as well, to be the Barbie doll or the sex object or the perfect mother. We don't want to be that either. We want to be ourselves too. So what we're really talking about is, can't we just all be ourselves as women, as men? And can't we just walk the path together in all of the possible challenges, all the warts that might come out, the quote-unquote lack of perfection? Who cares? We don't care. No one has to be perfect. We just want you to be you. We just want to be us. And we want to be in it with you. We want to walk the path together in our truth, in our vulnerability, in moving through whatever we're moving through that might be difficult. We want to do it together. Let's just all be brothers and sisters, holding hands, being our authentic selves, integrating our own inner masculines and inner feminines, and let's be together on this. Let's do it together. So, yes, men, precious men, my dear brothers, the biggest turn on for women is your vulnerability. So thank you so much. It's been delightful to be with you. And if you're a man or a woman and you would like to go deeper with me into being vulnerable, being in your truth, feeling your feelings, expressing yourself, I love doing that work with people. It's so powerful. It's so transformative for one's life and one's peace within. There is a link in the description to book a free consultation call with me to see if we can work together and if it would be helpful for you. And please, if it's resonant, please like this video. Please leave a comment. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel. All of that really helps me to continue this work. And Debbie says, I'm sharing this with the men in my life. Yay, sister, yes. Let's share this message. Men, it's the biggest turn on when you are vulnerable with us. It is the biggest turn on. We love you no matter what. But it's amazing when you turn to us, when you share what's on your heart. We just love it. We love it so much. All right, beautiful sisters. Thank you, MedChat and Debbie and Deborah, and can't wait to see you all again soon. So much love to everybody. Bye.